Hi, everyone. This is Rutesh Desai. I'm an ardent fan of pharma supply chain and a student. And today I'm blessed and happy to have the opportunity to interview Mr. Devendra Mishra, the executive director and the founder of BSMA. Welcome to the conversation and chat, Mr. Devendra Mishra. Thank you for your time today.
Well, thank you, Ritesh. Just to let you know, I'm a student of supply chain management as well, because it's a lifelong learning process, as you know. So I'm delighted to be with you.
So for those of you who know Devendra, sorry, I'm unsurprised by his answer, and I think that's what keeps the fire of learning burning in me. He's a mentor for me and somebody who I look up to. So thank you so much for that introduction. With that, as Devendra would want it, let's cut to the chase right away. So my first question to you, sir, is what, according to you, is the biggest challenge of clinical supply chain?
Well, we all recognize that clinical trials for drug development are the engine for our healthcare industry, our biopharma industry. That's the engine. And when you look at that industry of pharmaceuticals and biotech, it's about $580 billion in revenue. Just last year, I believe there were 50 plus, maybe a few more drugs that were launched into the marketplace, where probably 20,000 investigational new drugs had been submitted to FDA. Just think of that scenario that we have and realize the fact that over the decades, anywhere from a few $100 million to $5-10 billion is spent on developing drug. It takes 3 to 5 to 7 to 10 years to get one approved by FDA. And guess what? The success rate of that process is less than 10%. Only 7% of those efforts end up seeing the light of the day. So you can very well imagine how challenging the situation is. I recall a report submitted by Equivia that pointed out that 85% of those clinical trials were delayed.
Wow.
50% of them did not meet their targeted enrollments. Think of that for a second. So that is the whole thing that we are trying to orchestrate. To me, it's like a project. It's a project a bit like the moon shot. Kennedy's, hey, we're going to land a man on the moon before the end of the decade. Just take that spirit, take that orchestration, take that collaboration, take that discovery that has to be achieved in our time frame for our project of developing a drug. So now you can see the challenge we deal with every day in clinical trials. And supplying materials and drugs and other services to enable all this orchestration, as I call it, requires all kinds of multi-dimensional capabilities. And that's where we, people that conduct these trials and the people that support the trials, need to step up and fix the situation so that we can keep up with the phenomenal advancement taking place in science. I mean, just 2 days ago, I read about an engineered kidney of a pig was inserted into a human body. You and I can talk about CRISPR, and you and I can talk about cell and gene therapy. Science is going at a very, very rapid rate. Are we in operations, in supply management, in supply chain management, are we keeping up with it? And I got to tell you, the answer is no. And that to me is the biggest problem.
Wow. Your answer has covered almost all the topics that one could think of in clinical supply chain. And if I were to narrow down and summarize what you have said, and if I were to come up with some catchwords, I can think of supply chain visibility as one of them. You spoke a little bit about waste, because if 85, the statistics are just staggering, but if 85% of the drug is being wasted, as one of the studies that I've read, imagine the impact on the costs to the patient. Imagine the impact of if the success rate was slightly higher, if the waste was slightly higher, slightly lower, it could have an immense impact on our supply chains. So I think these are important factors.
I think you're hitting the bullseye, Ritesh. If I may go back to what you said, take waste, for example, right? The IQVIA study said, if I'm not wrong, that in our industry of $590 billion, there's over $110 billion of inventory in clinical trials. 110 or $12 billion of inventory. You pointed out the Tufts Drug Center's report that said 55% of that inventory is going to go to waste. And why does it go to waste? Expiration date is a factor. We overproduced is a factor. And there are other factors as well. So if I take 55% of that $112 billion, that's pretty close to $60 billion of waste. And there's also waste, as you pointed out, in the delays, in expediting a study, in shipping through expedited means. And you know what is mind-boggling? 50% of the cost of any trial is on monitoring the trial. Monitoring the trial. As if I was monitoring with an abacus. I was going with a little torch in the dark. No. You know what? Monitoring in today's world with all the technology should be instantaneous. It's like the GPS. But this is the state of the union of drug development. The other one you mentioned, I really think is the key. You talked about visibility, right? And if I may just expound on that a little bit, if we did nothing in our clinical supply management process, did nothing, but just did one thing, which is getting visibility in the ecosystem. And what do I mean by getting visibility in the ecosystem? All I mean is, I am a drug developer. Maybe this is my first drug I'm working on. I don't have any other commercial product. Or I'm a very mature company with hundreds and hundreds of commercial products. I need to know what's happening with my CRO, with my CMO, with my logistics provider. I want to know where my inventory is in a depot. I want to know how many patients have been enrolled and how many have left the enrollment. All this information is there. Someone is capturing it, but I, the poor lowly supply chain person in clinical trials, doesn't have access to this information in near real time. And if I had this information in near real time, I could improve my plan. I could expedite my delivery. I could make some changes. I could make decisions that lead to what you said, reducing that waste.
What's interesting though, sir, is on the one hand, we are talking about going to Mars, going to Moon, and imagine the amount of effort, the technology, the advancement in other areas in the industry. But then when we talk of clinical supply chain, you're talking about visibility where we need to know what is the inventory at a given node. We need to know if there is any expiring product. What do you think? Is there something here that we need to go after? Why we are behind? Why is the clinical supply chain industry, or for that matter, even pharma supply chain industry behind as compared to all the other industries? What's the pulse according to you?
And this has been my view, which, by the way, founded BSMA 18 years ago. My view then, as an adjunct professor of supply chain management at Pepperdine University, was that biotech was a science that needed to become a business, a science that needed to be transformed to a business. And that's what we've been doing at BSMA for all these decade and a half, is to promote collaboration amongst all the stakeholders of the industry so that those common objectives of the industry, which is maximizing patient care at the least cost, is achieved. So with that said, what we need to do, because culturally, we have been so inward looking as an industry, we're so science focused, which we have to be. We have to be R&D focused. And R&D is not easy. It's complicated. And on top of that, we have this layer of regulatory matters. We have to comply with regulations, not only in the United States, but in every country, Europe, every country of Australia, and on it goes, right? So regulatory matters, they twist and warp what we try to do on a straight line. But that's inevitable, right? So you do that. The fact that we are siloed, even within a company, because our culture of R&D is such where we have to protect the privacy, the intellectual property, ownership, et cetera, that we kind of we just embrace it and keep it to ourselves. So the silos within companies have to be broken down. And equally importantly, the relationship between our trading partners has to be automated. And that is easy to do. That technology is available. EDI came, I remember, 40 years ago. And EDI has gone so far ahead that it is just a matter of linking the systems of these partners, the CRO, the CMO, the logistics company, and that is lacking. I'll give you a very simple example. IRT, access to IRT information in real time, is a rare thing for a supply chain executive to have. Not knowing the pulse, use your word, of patients, of their enrollment, of their discontinuing a trial, that they said, oh, I don't like it, I'm going to give it up. Well, it's not convenient. I have to go to the hospital, etc., etc. Just not having that IRT be an integral part of my life as a supply chain executive. As a matter of fact, I'm not even joined at the hip with the clinical ops person. Imagine that. I should be joined at the hip with the clinical.
Absolutely.
The information should be transparent to me, and my information should be transparent to them. But that doesn't happen today. So you take those issues, and one good thing that's happened, the large companies have adopted an ERP system, right? All the big boys have ERP systems. They spent hundreds of millions of dollars installing them. But then they have not gone beyond the ERP system. They have not gone and connected with the other elements. They have not provided an intelligent highway, a real-time sharing from I think we need to do that. And then on the other side, imagine a company that is a startup company that cannot afford an ERP system.
Yeah.
They don't have the hundreds of millions of dollars. They don't even know whether they're going to make it or not. They need a solution that they can afford, an information system that they can afford. And it could be basic purchasing capability, basic laboratory information systems capability. And you and I can rattle off a bunch of those applications that they need. But to me, that is a big issue. That's a big issue.
You've touched on so many points, and I've been lucky. I've been privy to a lot of this information through my past interactions at BSMA with all the experts in the industry. I know we will not be able to cover all the topics today, but here I would like to ask you, what would you want to share with the audience about the BSMA conference that's coming up in March? What are the topics? What are the areas that they can look forward to? That's the first question I have. The second that comes to mind is, who is the audience according to you? Who should be coming to these conferences, and especially the one that's upcoming? Who should come to that conference? So what do you have to say for that, sir?
So I just want everyone to be aware of the fact that today, and I'm just going to pick clinical, because that's the one we are focusing on. We have about 100 companies engaged at least once every 2 months, if not once every month, discussing, sharing ideas, sharing experiences, asking questions about different aspects of clinical supply management, stuff that you and I just talked about in some detail. They're talking about how do we do a better job of planning? How about scenario analysis and planning? How about demand-driven planning versus supply-driven planning? So many of them are looking at tools and systems and technologies. Similarly, the others were looking at how do we manage the logistics, international trade, import and export, custom duties, realities, which can stifle a clinical trial, can delay a clinical, can damage the product in clinical trial. So they're addressing that. Then there's a group, a large group, that is talking about how do we pass the baton from clinical to commercial? Culturally, they're two different organizations. How do we create a transfer of knowledge and experience and know-how? So these people have what we call steering committees, and they have work streams. So my first suggestion for people who are in our space is to get engaged with these other people and raise your question, get your answers, share, give, teach. So that's one. And by the way, this goes on in other areas also of supply chain management, as you would believe. There's a group on digitalization. There's a huge group on transportation and logistics. There's a huge group on cell, gene, and therapy stuff. Same issues that we have in clinical, very similar issues, if not same, apply to these other areas as well. So I think becoming an integral part of those groups at BSMA by joining the steering committees is something I would request people to consider. Back to your other question about the conference itself, it's a 2-day conference on the 26th and 27th of March in Foster City, California. And it's going to be one where when you return to your office the next day, you should be able to change the way business operates. You will be able to change the status quo, if I may say so boldly. You will learn things that will improve your career, equip you to do better and better things. And it'll give you relationships that you built, networks they've created, where you can go to them and ask questions and get input and advice and that kind of stuff. So the program itself starts with some of the top leaders of the industry talking about what they are doing in supply chain management to deal with the challenges. We have experts on international trade, focus on tariffs. We have CAPS Research Institute as well as Arizona State University. We just are running a survey in collaboration with them. They will provide results of the survey which deals with how do we achieve resilience, sustainability, and profitability in the supply side of our business. Then we have sessions on how do we really digitalize? What simple steps can I take in my organization when I don't have a strategic plan? That's a luxury that some have, I don't. So how do I do that? But most importantly, it is a place where you meet your colleagues and have a very honest, direct conversation and build a relationship that will make you a much better supply chain executive. So hopefully I've answered that question, Rutesh.
No, loud and clear. Thank you for that explanation. Thank you for sharing details about the work streams and committees. I've been part of some. And I think for me, just the pleasure of being around people who understand our language. Supply chain is a different language. Clinical supply chain is a completely different language, whereas pharma supply chain is a different language too. To me, the ability to just talk to people who can understand the pains and who have common interests in mind has been the best gift that BSMA has given me. In terms of the conference, an ability to meet these people, these experts of the industry face to face, and then going through workshops where you can actually sit like in a university, sit through the program, sit and learn. I remember once when I had been through an entire 3-hour session of a clinical supply chain end to end, and I feel like I still remember all the aspects of what I learned from that meeting, and I can show off when I come back to the office. Means a lot to me. So with that, I would want to thank you for your time today. I would want to say that just like me as a student, I've learned so much. I would like to invite everybody who is keen on knowing more about clinical supply chain and being part of this family to join us 26th and the 27th of March this year. So with that,
I just want to end on a final note, if I may, Rutesh, and that is the COVID-19 pandemic demonstrated one thing to not only the nation, to the world at large, that is a supply chain that makes things happen or does make things happen. It proved how vulnerable the supply chain was. There was, we didn't have the connectivity. And if you go back to when BSMA was founded 18 years ago, the tagline we used was, because life depends on us. The point was,
it's true.
It is the flawless execution in the supply chain that's imperative to save human lives. And it became more than obvious during the pandemic. They did not. And if you just sit back and think, while purchasing focuses on purchasing and transportation focuses on transportation, supply chain management focuses on everything from end to end. So sustainability cannot just be the responsibility of the purchasing agent. No, it's the responsibility of the supply chain executive. Security is the responsibility of the supply chain executive. Achieving an affordable drug is the responsibility of the supply chain executive. The point I want to make is we have to broaden our perspective, get larger lenses to look through, but let's look through the supply chain management lens, because it is the tide that raises all boats. So see you at the conference.
With that, I think it's a shout out for all the people who are in supply chain. I think use this for your resume and ask for a pay raise and ask for promotions, because I think what you just pointed out is people in supply chain do a lot more than they know. You are doing all these aspects of supply chain, managing all these aspects, which I think once you start writing them down, you will find out how much more, everybody in supply chain has to offer. And something else that stands out is you mentioned the pandemic. During the pandemic, it was pretty obvious if people, countries, companies, if we all can come together, we can really reduce the lead times of how long it takes for a drug to come to market. If we could do it during the pandemic under such pressure, isn't it pertinent on us to now see and ponder if we can do this all over again and make this the new standard? So I'll leave the thought for the audience with that. Any last words, sir, for you?
Yes, we can.
Awesome.
Yes,
Yes, we can. So
Yes.
let's figure it out together at the BSMA conference, and we'll go from there. Thank you for your time today. What a pleasure talking to you. I'll see you at the conference. Bye now.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Bye.